My name is Wiener. I was born in Poland, in a little town called Chrzanów. I am now 89 years old. When I was 13 years old, the Germans invaded Poland, and my father was murdered at the very beginning of the war. The reason I'm sharing my story is mostly because I was asked to share my story. And in 1942, the German knocked at the door in the middle of the night and they took me away. My stepmother pleaded with the German. She told him, "He's such a young boy, he's 15 years old, he needs a mother. Don't take him away from me, I need that boy." What did the Germans do? They slapped on her face, "You dare to question our action?" And they took me away. And then I arrived to my first labor camp called Blechhammer. So to make it short, I spent 35 months in 5 different camps. Blechhammer, Brande, Klettendorf, Großmasterwitz, those were slave labor camp. And the very last one was Waldenburg, a concentration camp guarded by the SS. My life in the camps, the conditions were very similar in all the camps. The kind of food, shelter. You see this room, 24 people lived in that environment. There were 3 bunks. We had no privacy. We were always hungry. They gave us 2 slices of bread in the morning, and the bread was made out mostly of sawdust. It would be edible to any person who had more or less a normal life. When it was cold, it was cold. When it was hot, it was hot. We hardly had anything to wear. I have till this very day 2 frozen toes, and I have scars till this very day, even though many of them faded, but they are still there, and so are my mental scars. This was happened in the very first week. While I was working in that Blechhammer, it's very important to remember, in that Blechhammer, the German built it at a huge chemical complex. And for that purpose, they employed thousands, tens of thousands of people, enslaved people. So at one point, while I was working, cleaning an area of a forest to prepare it for construction, a Pole approached me and he told me in the Polish language, "I see you have a watch. Give me your watch, I'll give you a loaf of bread." I was very hungry, naive, I gave him the watch. He promised to give me a loaf of bread, but he never gave it to me. Coming back to our camp in the evening, there was a roll call. We all had to assemble at the center of the camp, and the commander said like that, "Today at the working place, one of you prisoners gave away his watch for a promised loaf of bread, and as you know, this is a crime. If that prisoner doesn't step forward and admits his crime, you are all going to be punished collectively." I was brought up with certain values, and one of them was that I was responsible for my own action, and I did step forward, and that's what I said. I'm the one that gave away my watch for a promised loaf of bread because I am so hungry. They whipped me 15 strokes on my bare body. It was so painful. I remember those pains. I was screaming, but nobody is going to help me. This was my punishment. So what happened is, it was a huge building. The German employees were instructed not to get in touch with us, not to give us anything, I mean us prisoners, and not to talk to us, not to make even eye contact with us. But one day, while I was working and dismantling a machine in this part, a German woman, middle-aged woman, on the way to the restroom, did make eye contact with me, and she hinted to me with her finger like that. I had no idea what she meant. I had the feeling that there must be something important. But I had to watch myself that nobody else should notice me approaching that indicated spot. Eventually I did find the right moment, and what happened? I found a sandwich underneath a crate, a box, of 2 slices of white bread and a slice of cheese. And for some reason which I'll never be able to explain, the following morning I approached the same place and I found the sandwich again. But the question here is, why did she risk her life for me? If she would be caught, she would be executed instantly. And she risked her life for a young Jewish boy. But I do know that I learned something. She convinced me that there are good people and bad people in every group, that prejudice and stereotyping is completely absurd. So we assembled to go to Waco, made in 1945, but the Germans, the guards that ordinarily escorted us to our working place, didn't show up. And we had no idea why. About 1 o'clock, a tank of the Russian army approached our gate, and the officer told us, "You are liberated." We had no idea, it was a surprise, but we were so despondent, and we were so weak, we couldn't enjoy that moment of liberation.
He's a living, breathing representative of history, which is why it's so crucial for kids to see, while they can, survivors. Because when you see a person and they tell you the story and they show you pictures and the family members they lost and what kind of tortures he went through, you can't help but be moved.
And in 1942, the German knocked at the door in the middle of the night and they took me away.
My students got to hear living history. We read a lot about it in books, we talk about it, watch videos, but it's something completely different to have a first-hand source, a person who had lived through history, come and talk to my kids about it.
I think struck a chord with the kids is the stereotyping, and used examples to show how kids can group things together in their mind that don't necessarily group well, like all kids who are tall are going to be such and basketball players or whatever. And just as that simple analogy, it was not all Nazis were German, but not all Germans were Nazis. And that was a good message for our kids to know.
Hearing his story for the first time, it kind of left me in shock of what he's done to get this far and how much he's lost.
The study of history has always been important. It gives context to future decisions and behavior. We're not doing the next generation any favors by excluding historical events, like the Holocaust, from the formal education process. By ignoring these events as an educator, a parent, or a mentor, that void can give way to several things. We're denying the young the opportunity to critically evaluate our shared history and the reasons that events transpired. We're denying them the historical context when they witness modern acts of genocide, like the Tutsis and the Yazidis. We potentially make them more vulnerable to similar ideologies of prejudice and hate. We fail to empower them to question all acts of racism, prejudice, and injustice. And finally, we deny them the opportunity to identify their own struggles in the stories of survivors, much like Alter's story.
I think the most important thing that Alter leaves us with is he can come through an experience that is just unmitigated horror on a scale that none of us have ever lived to, and thankfully have never had to live to. And since he can come through that with the spirit of love he has right now, nobody is beyond saving. Nobody is beyond that point of recovery. It is possible for anybody to come back and embrace the world with love. And I think that's a very important message for the world to hear right now.
From the very young age, kids should know that we are all equal, we are all God's children. And you don't have a reason, a logical reason, to hate somebody because of his religion or because of his originality, ethnicity, all those things.
I think the importance for him with children is that, my interpretation of this, he lost his childhood. And he sees that there are a lot of children that are suffering for whatever reason. And he wanted them to help them to understand, to appreciate family, the things that he lost.
At one point in 1945, I couldn't work anymore. The Germans decided to eliminate me, like they eliminated everybody who couldn't work anymore. It's useless. And then all of a sudden, a German entrepreneur approached me in the line where I was standing to be gassed and cremated. And he said, get out of the line, go back to work. And he sent me back to work. And a few weeks later, I was free. So you never know. Never give up hope.